Boom.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited about about this group today. We're going to be talking about synths and everything we can get a. Uh, Wait a minute, I've got a weird feedback. Is anybody having this? No.
No.
Oh shit! Something is. I'm starting the video anyway. Let's welcome the guests. First of all, welcome to the show, Alessandro, joining us from Portugal, right?
Portugal, yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you on. And Drumcell Mo is here with us, joining us from Los Angeles.
Hey.
What's up, man?
Man, just hanging in there another day, man. Surviving the pandemic.
Looking good.
I tried.
You got a new camera. Looks like you got a new camera since last time you were joining.
Yeah. No more of those Mac cameras. No, I'm using a GoPro now. It's been working quite nice for me.
Nice one. You're making me look like an amateur.
No, of course, never.
I like the beard.
Yeah, it's going all white, man. Look at this.
I like it.
I'm aging.
I was going to say you look younger.
Yeah,
Oh, come on, man.
Maybe that's the camera.
That's Tony Rolando talking there. Hey, Tony, what's up?
Hello.
Nice to have you on, man.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, and you're joining us from
Asheville, North Carolina.
Asheville. That's right. Okay, cool.
Beautiful
Nice one.
city.
Okay. I see friends dropping in saying hi. I can imagine with this group, there's going to be people who are interested in asking any of us questions, and you can do so by making comments in the chat on YouTube and Twitch. And I hope we can bring them in. Usually we try to, but sometimes we ignore them just because we're just chatting away and having fun, but having a good time.
Should
Indeed.
happen.
Yeah. Welcome everybody. Let's. I think we should really go straight into the Strega, guys, because it's an extraordinary piece of kit. I checked out some of the YouTube videos, and it looks like a really playful little box, with a really nice balance between having some control over it and kind of know what it's going to do, plus an element of surprise and unpredictability. Is that something you try to get into its features? Is that basically the concept of the instrument? This combination, I mean.
Well, I personally, when this collaboration with Tony started, or even before then, and the instruments that I was more attracted to had always an element of independence or ability to be almost creative companions, in the sense that there were less instruments that were just manifesting whatever you had in mind as an artist. I've never been the kind of artist or musician or creator, whatever you want to call it, that has a concept in mind, and then the tool allows you to manifest it. So you just have to give me a tool that allows to do that. To me, it's more about I need to be, tickled, and then that creates something, and then the machine makes a move, and I make another move, and so when we got together, I mean, Tony always had an eye and an ear for how I did things, and always had an interest on my relationship with the machine more than the machine itself, because he knew that the result was the sum of the two things. It wasn't necessarily, okay, you use the synthy, let's recreate the synthy. No, it was more about what is it about, say, the synthy that makes Alessandro sound like Alessandro, or makes Alessandro write or create like he does. And so I think his ability was to be able to, in my opinion, to grab that independent, that sort of instability that comes from those old machines, that sort of like sentient, being,
Yeah.
but putting into an environment that still allowed you to shape that in a more constructive and more rational, I don't want to say rational way, but like, I think it's half inspiring and unpredictable box and half canvas that you can shape into what you want, so I think the balance between the two things is very, very strong. So it's never out of control where you go, whoa, what are you gonna, I can't use this. But it's also not just going to be, I don't have anything in mind, therefore there's nothing coming out. There's going to be, always something that the Strega gives back to you. I think it's a very alive instrument, and I think that is what it has in common with the instruments that in a way instructed us, to create this design. This is my take. Obviously, Tony will probably give a better explanation of what I just said. But
No, I don't think so. I think that's a pretty good explanation, actually.
but yeah,
So-
in the end of the day, it's just it was a very, very similar situation to being in a band or a creative relationship with someone. It's just, I say band because that's usually, being a musician, that's sort of like I grew up with. When I was collaborating with someone, was either a band or some sort of musical output or outcome. With Tony, we never sat down thinking we're going to make a record or we're going to make, we're going to release this. And it was more like what we felt like kids in a way. It was just very, very creative. It was fun, and there were frustrating moments, obviously, probably more for him because I'm more like a child going, hey, Tony, can you do this? And it's like, I could see sometimes him losing hope in me because, it's just, you get excited. You come up with weird things. Yeah, but there's one now. Can you put like 10?
So what are the major things you had like a change of or different opinions about? Is there have there been any serious fights about things, or did it come together naturally?
Personally, I don't remember fights. I think we all sort of like informed each other about what worked and what didn't work. Because, a lot of the things that we started with, I think on paper, we both agreed, oh, this is going to be a cool thing to have. And then until those things materialize as a prototype and you realize some of them actually are the opposite of what you thought they were going to do or be. And you go, actually, you know what, this is not. Or the very entity of the machine was different. I'm sure at a certain point we will release some of the material that we worked on, like the paperwork and the sketches. And there's a lot of stuff like that it's completely different from what Strega became. Not because of constraints or because our idea had to be distilled into something, had to be subtractively, chiseled into something different.
Yeah.
More because just like a song or an idea, as you go on writing it, might change this chord because now this chord doesn't work as well with the chorus as it did before you had the chorus. So you change it because at the end of the day, what matters is the whole song. And that's what Strega was really. I mean, it became, including the name, it just became a thing as we went on, and which makes it extremely special because it was the first thing really that we did together that came out.
Right. I'm curious to know how much time is involved in developing things like this, from all the way from the initial idea to the final product. Tony, what's the usual trajectory for this kind of things?
Probably a lot longer than most people would realize, and a lot longer than I'd like to admit. But Alessandro and I talked about stuff for quite a while before we even really sat down and committed to anything. But once we did commit to something, I mean, there was quite some time. I mean, maybe like 2 years, was it?
I think 3 years probably.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Because I
quite
don't remember
some
when we
time.
met in New York. That was way before anything.
Right. Yeah.
And you already had the notebook, and we were already writing stuff down. So I would consider that as already part of the process. It's all stuff that even if didn't evolve into a prototype, was still necessary discussions. Because we were trying to find each other and find ourselves and find what we wanted to do, and certain things like that come out only after discussing and talking.
Right. It just takes time.
So
Yeah.
it also was a very good opportunity to know each other, to find out how we worked and how to, to me, how to present things to Tony in a way that it didn't feel overwhelmed. It didn't feel, I don't want to say attacked, because there was never, as I said, any negativity to it. But somebody's excitement for someone, especially in Tony's position, who's designing this stuff, might be interpreted. And I'm not saying you did, but sometimes you have a long day, and this dude comes in and says, "Hey, do this and do this. Why don't you do this and do that? Why don't we try this? You should try this." It can get overwhelming, especially if it's someone like me with an accent.
So what are those first ideas then? Is it something? Is it like okay, it should have this and this functionality, or is it more like a direction for a sonic aesthetic, or like maybe the way you interact with it? What ideas are at the start of a project like this? Is it?
I feel like everything that you just said is at the start of it.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, everything from how big should it be, and what sort of functionality should it have, what's the aesthetic of the sound.
I'm laughing because I remember, like, I still have Tony's face going, "Well, this is going to be big. If you want to do this, it's going to be big."
Yeah, some of the earlier incarnations were such that they would be physically much larger. And it got to this point where I kind of had to say, like, look, if we're going to do it like this, it's going to be, I'm thinking roughly this size. And I think Alessandro wanted it to maybe be a little smaller. And so that was like a whole process of compromise, of trying to figure out, like, okay, well, what creates the best package that is Strega. And so that is also another element that you didn't mention, which is after you put all the ideas on the table, figuring out which ideas work best together, which ideas are absolutely essential to achieving the aesthetic and the goal of the instrument.
And are there any things that you decided to leave out? Because it is a very compact machine, and it seems for the size it has a massive range still. It has a huge range, vocabulary, whatever you would call it. But it's there's a lot of things you can do, but it is also limited in a way. So were there any things you kind of sacrificed to make it fit?
If I remember correctly, yes and no, in the sense that if you were to consider it before, I think the moment that we agreed that the best choice, both from a creative point of view and from I don't know if economical, but like from a point of view that would consider the company, when we agreed that the format had to be the zero coast, no coast format. Once that happened, I think it was a very positive milestone for me, and I think for Tony, because all of a sudden gave us a specific formatting, and also allowed us to see it as a part of a bigger microcosm. In other words, shortly after, and correct me, Tony, if I'm wrong, but I think shortly after we agreed on that, I think that's when you told me that there were plans to develop the no control, so that the zero control was, or it was already, I mean, you were designing a sequencer. I don't know if it was already going to be in the format, but what I'm saying is that the idea of having a Strega with a built-in controller went out the window in a positive way, because you go, well, actually, I'd rather not have it and know that there's one the same size that I can use when I need it. Because if I'm going to a studio and I want to use it simply to treat stuff, because that's what Strega is also very good at, as I'll play you some examples, but then I don't need the whole keyboard and I want it to be super small. Maybe I can even put it in my pocket so I don't have to bring a backpack, So when we reached that milestone of deciding the format of the Strega is going to be the no-coast format, I think it made it much easier to take advantage of the library, the make noise library of circuits and products that were out already, and sort of use those at the service of the Strega to a certain extent. Case in point, the sequencer, which attached to the Strega makes it a different instrument, essentially adds functionality, adds a certain amount of control, by being able to tune it or just to modulate it much differently than as a standalone. And the no coast, which is what started it all when it comes to the format. And all of a sudden, with those three, you have MIDI in that you can then cascade to the other modules if you want to. You have clock, you have all these things, and obviously you have the voice and the character of the no coast that you can just piggyback into the Strega. So it's I think that was a moment where we started seeing what might have been interpreted as having to cut out functions, as actually looking at the functions that we needed from what we had already, which made it easier, because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's now you can try things out, you know what I mean? And you can have modules that Tony has and use them with a prototype to see what would work, you know what I mean? And I think at that point it became even faster, the whole process. Right, Tony?
I think you addressed something before I even had a chance, but I was going to ask, I mean, what did you have in mind in terms of an interface to actually play with it before you decided to use the O control? I'm sorry if I cut you off, Tony, about saying something else.
I think we talked about touch plates from the get-go, right?
Yes,
It was
yeah,
touch
absolutely. It
plate
was
with sequencer.
yeah, it was a sequencer. Yeah, there was touch plates. I mean, there was a lot of different things discussed actually, and there was some different people brought in. At one point, we were looking at doing this sort of digital sequencer, I believe, and we had our buddy Matt Sherwood come in, and we had an afternoon discussion with him on that, setting up the framework for that. I think one of the reasons that I kind of pushed for putting it into that smaller format and kind of leaving some of that stuff behind is that I felt like what we were moving towards was such a distinct flavor, and I felt like a lot of people would probably like to have this flavor, they would like to have this aesthetic, but they might be more excited if it could take up a little less space in their studio and they could use it with things that they already have. And so it kind of became about distilling it into what is it about Strega that just isn't anywhere else? What is it about Strega that you can't do with existing things that are in your studio? And that's kind of how we came up with the final feature set.
And what would you describe of what that is? What does the Strega setup? What does it? What are the things that set it apart from other stuff that is around? Because there's shitloads of stuff around.
There's a lot of stuff around. Absolutely.
Everything. I mean, it's nothing sounds or behaves the way. I mean, I know it's a pretentious way to sell it, but the way that things, the common elements have been implemented by Tony and they live together, it's nowhere to be found but here. It's an instrument that we collaboratively designed. So there's a lot of me and the way that I make music on it. So that aspect, which is not personal in the sense that it will make everybody sound like me, but that's a very unique thing. You won't find that in any other instrument. It was such a human back and forth that created this machine that I can guarantee there's nothing. If people sit in front of it, obviously, if you purchase by looking at features, people will go, oh, I can have a delay like that. And yes, essentially, there are other modules that have that delay based on the same chip. It's just not implemented the same way. But there's several guitars that have the same strings on, or there's several cars that mount the same tires on. But it's just, or the same frame. There's many cars that just have the same exact frame. But like a Chrysler 300 and a Challenger. But which one are you going to pick? The fucking Challenger.
Challenger, of course.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
but so that was my thought. I don't think it's very hard these days to say you got something unique, because people go online. It's like, well, it's the same format as the Zero Coast, or it just maybe looks like this, it sounds like that. It's like, no, sit in front of it. Think about the fact that it's two people that went 3 years back and forth having a relationship, and design this, and just close your eyes and try to make music, and you'll see that it's a very, very uniquely implemented set of features, I think.
Yeah, it looks like a very musical piece of kit. Yeah, for sure. We've got a question. Let's see if that's any relevant from Lance Drake. Curious what the early prototypes. Hey, Lance.
Hi, Lance.
What's up, Lance? He's curious what the early prototypes looked like when the Strega was developed. Yeah, how? Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about features that didn't make it or that were decided not to use. I'm wondering. So, you're making this thing that at some point you need to have a working version, right?
Mhm.
How long? What is happening after that? Is it like you have another discussion? You ditch some features, you add some. Can you describe that process a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, we had talked about it a lot, and I had visited Alessandro in L.A. a few times, and Berlin a few times, and we'd also met up in New York. And then at one point, he came out to Asheville, I think for a whole week. You were out there, and every day we worked on it. And at that point, the Strega had materialized into an actual functional group of circuits. But the circuits were on something that is called a breadboard, which is sort of a very precarious way of building up circuits to where they work until someone bumps the table or breathe on it wrong.
Frankenstein synth.
It's just it's what it is. It's a pad of it's like a perforated pad, and the pads are aligned in a grid such that you can connect different components by kind of stabbing them into the pad. And it's fine for really simple things, but the minute you get to a point of something as complex as a Strega, even, it was a little too big to be on a breadboard. But the nice thing about the breadboard is it allows you to prototype fast and make changes fast. I mean, I'm talking to the point where I could add a feedback loop and Cortini could play it and say, I like this. And I'd say, great, should I juice it up a little bit more? And I can literally be making resistor value changes or capacitor value changes in real time as he's playing, and I can literally just be changing the circuit and kind of watch his eyes light up or watch him kind of back away a little bit.
Oh, that's cool that you actually developed it like that, like tuning the thing according to whatever happens with it musically. I think that's a really good idea, because otherwise you'll just be sending stuff back and forth and having countless long emails going. It's a really cool way.
And it's a pretty interesting process to have I mean, he's literally sitting next to me. I'm here, he's here. I'm literally making component changes as he's playing this thing, and he's just kind of giving me like the most immediate feedback that somebody could possibly get.
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty great, because as you noted, I mean, mailing something, even if you ship it overnight and they get it right away, it's still, there's quite a bit of a delay line, so to speak, in getting feedback on that delay. So it's a little bit.
I know what you're doing.
Definitely
all the hits,
awesome.
all the hits tonight.
That one's for Walker and Pete. It was pretty awesome to have him there for that. I feel like that week was the week that we really, really, we really kind of cemented some of the ideas that became the Strega. So him sitting there and me just changing things. And, obviously, though, after that, you want to get it off that breadboard as fast as possible, because even something as simple as, hey, I wonder how this responds to other control voltages. I mean, if you want to pick that thing up and move it to another room or space that has some other instruments, you can't do that. You got to bring the instruments into there. And then you got to be real careful as you're plugging everything in that you don't bump anything. It's just a very precarious arrangement. So I try to go from the breadboard to an actual circuit board, a prototype circuit board, really quickly. And we live in this amazing time where, I mean, for a lot of money, and it's not cheap, but it's still great to be able to get it fast. I can get a finished 4-layer circuit board in 48 hours once I commit to design. So it's kind of incredible. I mean, now it's an insanely expensive circuit board, but it works good, and it's great, for checking out an idea and getting it from that breadboard to an actual board that could be mailed to someone and they could play. So I get maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 of those, and then Devin, who works at Make Noise, would build these up, and then I would do further tweaks. We'd ship one to Alessandro, and what's that? And then we would just have chats about it. He would say, I like what you did here, and I really like this or that. Or at one point he found that he didn't like the input response of the external input. And so it was like a mad race. Okay, let's figure this out. What doesn't he like? It would have been nice if we'd have figured that out while he was there. It would have moved a lot more quickly, but obviously he's got a life to live over at that point in Berlin. So
I was going to ask
forever.
if the physical distance between both of you guys slowed down the process by any level. I mean, shipping
Sure.
prototypes back and forth must have been quite difficult.
I mean, it's just a lot of, it's just a high FedEx bill, really. I mean, we live in an amazing time. I mean, I can make a change to a Strega and have it to him in less than 48 hours. So from Asheville to Berlin.
That's impressive.
And
Plus,
I mean,
who
it's-
knows, what sort of feedback would have, like if you're thinking, well, maybe if I was in Asheville, then it would have been much quicker. Not necessarily. We don't know
That's true.
if we would have. I mean, I think, as Tony said, having that week of working together allowed us to leave extremely fulfilled with a lot of stuff to process before we reached the prototype that we finally, let's say, started with. If we were there all the time, I don't know if it would have been the same. It's hard to tell. I think that
It might not.
the
it
one
might
thing.
have- it might still not be finished.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way to tell. But what I can tell you is that maybe the one drawback was German customs, because they suck. It's just they just make it harder to deal with stuff like that. Like you gotta go there, and you feel guilty the
Yeah.
moment you walk in just because you're there. The Zollamt, fucking fuck that.
Yeah.
Actually, Alessandro, I was wondering, do you think that the process is comparable to writing an album or to prepare for a release or something? And especially, you spend all this time sort of conceiving these ideas and trying these different incarnations and perfecting the product in a way. Isn't it like you're sick and tired of the thing? Now it's real.
No, because none of the changes.
I get that
were,
when I do a
say,
release,
For example,
once it-
perfecting perfecting doesn't come into place, because perfecting implies that we already had a clear vision of what the result was going to be. But generally speaking, till the very end, and there weren't that many prototypes. Like once it became a thing, there weren't. If Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but there weren't that many changes when it comes to what it sounded like and what it could do. I mean, there were changes from a design point of view that he had to take care of, under the hood. But I feel, to me, as much as I collaborated with other people musically, I feel it's a very similar situation with Tony. It's just a different outcome, because once you release a record, I've been very lucky in my life in the sense that, people react to the music that I have, that I make, that I put out. But it's a very passive reaction in the sense that the majority of them just digest and consume the music that I make the way that it is, as an album or during their day, and it's a very emotional part. I'm not cutting any importance from it, but once you release an instrument that still has a lot of you in it, and particularly the way that we achieved it, which I feel like it is a blank canvas or an easel, if you like to call it that way, but where then you get other people's voice through it. Then you have a layer, which you didn't have before. Because once you release a record, that's it. You're not going to hear
That's
people
true.
making their own version of your record. But when you
No,
release
but
an
they
instrument,
will have their own, they will have their own interpretations and their own memories attached to it. So it still has like a second.
but you won't
life,
hear
you know?
those. You
No.
won't hear
This,
those.
well,
Yeah.
unless they tell you. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
No,
you're right. The
but
difference
it
is
won't
that
come out as music. It won't come
doesn't
out as
enable
music.
people. Yeah, it doesn't enable people to do something of their own, which is a difference with a project like this, I guess. Yeah.
Well, this is designed,
Yeah.
and so I think one of the fears, and I think, particularly after the Sonic State video where I introduced it, was, that people would assume that it would sound like I make it sound, because it's an instrument that we designed for me to begin with, but it was very good to start seeing everyone using it and seeing that each different artist and musician that used it came up with different things. So it was a very malleable instrument that really adapts to the hands and the spirit and the emotions of whoever plays it, And also non-musicians, I had friends that don't play music, that sit in front of it and are able to feel good. And, that was another goal. I mean, not to be all of fucking, like new agey about it, but I mean, to have a box that I can just put on headphones in a corner and feel like I'm zoning out for like an hour, and I don't know what's happening, but it feels good. It sounds good. I can just leave it on, close my eyes, and go, yeah, I saved some money on therapy. I'm just doing this now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel the Strega. For me, that's what it is. it's a cross between a Buddha box and an instrument, in the sense that you could set up something and feel good about doing, hearing it and listening to it. But at the same token, there's this new layer of creativity that comes from the fact that other people will own it. And I think it's a new thing that I'm getting used to. Not getting used to in the sense that it feels uncomfortable. It's just another layer, a complete new layer that I'm not used to, that I'm really excited about, because I'm starting seeing, Sarah Reed doing videos, or I see Basek doing stuff, or Jamie Lydell did a video that was a little demo video, very vocal based, and I go, wow, I mean, these are all, even if I would have applied the same technique, I wouldn't have come out with those things, it just so makes me feel extremely excited, I'm like, I can't wait to hear what Mo will do with it, so it's a whole new world for me. I'm sure that, for Tony, it's he's worked on different modules. I know this is a different thing for him, but for me as an artist, it's a completely new layer to be creative. And I feel extremely lucky because I've been able to do it with Tony, which not only was a successful collaboration, but he's a very good friend of mine. So it's like, it's a very lucky position to be in.
I would agree.
Awesome. Mo, did you get yours?
No, mine's supposed to be arriving tomorrow. I've been waiting. I was hoping I'd get it before this
I have
day.
all the track. Check your tracking.
Exactly. At least I'd have something to add to the conversation with a little experience, but I'll have to wait for tomorrow.
I guess we should have waited to do this.
No, it's fine. I'm excited to get it. I mean, it looks incredible, and it looks like something that's easy to get happy accidents out of, and it's inspiring, especially since two of my good friends made it. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'm not your friend. I'm a
pretend,
good
man.
friend. I'm a good friend. I try to be.
Yeah.
Not always.
Try harder.
Well, you used to come to Berlin. Now we're not going anywhere. No one is going anywhere.
Exactly. We're stuck.
Oh, there's a question.
See, that's a good question right there. That's the first. That's the stuff that fucking triggers me. I'm sorry, but like at first glance, that's already wrong. First glance, if something at first glance, then you just say, no, I'm going to step away. There's no first glance. It's a complex instrument that requires people to sit in front of it and figure it out. And also all about such, it's just, no, I'm sorry. Out.
Well, actually,
I have zero tolerance.
I do have some thoughts on that. And I think that one of the things that I noticed that Alessandro gravitated to was the synthy, obviously. And he had shown me his synthy and let me have some time with it. And he was talking a lot about the mixer section, how he liked how it saturated. And then eventually a friend of mine had located a synthy for Make Noise. And so we got a synthy as well, and I was able to study it a little more closely. And I started to realize that the synthy is kind of one of the things that makes it special is it saturates everywhere. Like everything saturates. Like the input to the reverb, in
every stage, yeah.
It's every stage saturates, and they all saturate a little bit differently, and then they're also all very influenced by the following stage. So if you have saturation happening at the input of the filter, and then you patch the output of the filter into the reverb, that saturates too in a different way. But if you maybe decide to go to the VCA instead of the reverb, I mean, there's just so many things that you can do that can create these different kind of saturations. And so with the Strega, I really wanted there to be a lot of different points where saturation could happen, or not. You don't have to. And those things kind of build as you go from one circuit to the next. And you can create a lot of different textures that way, I think. Because you're not just... it's funny because I was just last night, for some reason, I really felt compelled to get an SPX 990. And don't ask me why. But there's this distortion in it. And I was playing with that distortion a little bit. And I was thinking about how distortion is considered such an effect ever since the 80s, really. It's like something you turn on. And it's just right there. It's just the distortion is just right there in that box. And the distortion in the SPX 990 was kind of just whatever. But then by accident, I had turned the input to the 990 up way too much, going from modular into it. And then it distorted this whole other way that I'm sure that they didn't intend. And it was actually kind of amazing distortion happening at the proper input to the unit, not the distortion algorithm that's built into it. But if you combined those two things, the distortion at the input of the unit, which is analog, and the digital distortion, suddenly it was something that was actually pretty interesting. And I think that's kind of at the heart of Strega is it's not about the individual functional blocks. It's about how they're allowed to interact with each other and how all of them can saturate and kind of influence each other in that way. And that's what makes it feel a little bit more than just the basic sum of its parts.
I was just looking around because I have an SPX 990 here, and you can have it, Tony.
But let me say one thing, because I don't want to be the bummer one that got angry. I didn't get angry, but the thing about
you see what I got to deal with? You see?
it's true. But then I bum people out because I'm get old. But you have to understand that this is the first time that I have to consciously, because usually I don't give a shit about what the feedback is about stuff that I do, because I do it for myself. So I feel lucky that people like what I do when they like it. But if they don't, I'll move on and do something else. But something like an instrument, it's different, and so it's hard to separate the feedback from the curiosity, you know what I mean, and the rushed feedback that we're used to give. And I am guilty of the same thing by just seeing something on a screen and saying, oh well, this is nothing, but you know what I mean. Yeah. We all do that. But to go back to the saturation and to the Synthi particularly, that was the first instrument for me that showed me how saturation wasn't necessarily a negative thing, or like gain staging wasn't necessarily a bad thing. And as Tony said, in the Synthi, it happened at every level, at the VCO levels, at the mixing stage, at the filter input, at the output, at the input of the reverb. So it happens everywhere, but wherever you try it, it has a different effect. Mm-hmm. So, you hardly ever have it all on. It's the equivalent of having a mixer that goes to 11 at every stage as opposed to 10. So you're able to sort of push it over in different spots, So that definitely was an element that we kept in mind, when it came to implementing certain features into the Strega. But I want to make it clear that it wasn't, all right, how did they do a circuit? I mean, I assume, but, it was never going to the original circuits and try to see how it was done there in order to implement. It was like, what does this circuit, the original circuit, do that I like? And how can we make our own version within our new creation? It was always about what the result was in these instruments, as opposed to, obviously the easel is another instrument that I'm really attached to, but we never, aside from the touch plate, which I relate to simply because I'm not a keyboard player, therefore I'd rather have a touch plate than a physical key. But we never thought about, we got to make a cross between an easel and a Synthi, because those are the two instruments that I've been mostly creative on in the last 5 years, 60, whatever it is. It was more about, what did I get out of the Synthi, what did I get out of the easel, and why? And how can I feel that way in front of a new instrument that doesn't make me feel like it's a, 50% of one and 50% of the other Frankenstein together. You know what I mean? Which would have never worked. So I think Tony's ability was able to see the saturation as one of the ingredients that allowed me to come up with certain things. And just like the delay, or like the delay, for example, that is implemented on the Strega, which is the instrument, if you want, it's the heart of the instrument, came from pedals, like certain pedals that I really liked and the way that they worked and how they weren't very clean. That was the starting point. In Strega, that becomes at the center. That's why the delay is not just it's not at the end of the module, and it doesn't look like an effect at the end, that you sort of mix in when you need it. It's one of the big knobs, like two of the big knobs, in fact, are for the delay itself, so they're protagonists just as much as the VCO, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
So you say it's not necessarily at the end, like that would be the normal signal flow.
Yeah, someone asked about the signal flow. The signal flow, it's very variable, the signal flow. I wouldn't, especially considering the feedback loop in in the
There's
sorry, the
actually-
filter
there's
in the
many
feedback loop.
loops actually.
Yeah.
More than one.
Sorry, I meant the filter in the feedback, delay
right, yeah,
feedback.
yeah.
But I'll let Tony talk about the signal flow because probably he's gonna do
Well,
it.
I mean, he's right. The echo is not at the end. It's actually, I would say it's kind of right in the middle, which it makes it a little bit different. Makes it more a part of the synthesis as opposed to an effect. So that is definitely it's a choice. I mean, some people would say it's an odd choice. Other people would say it's a choice that excites them. But it's a choice, and that's where it is. And you really can't. That part of it you can't really change. It's just because there's so much feedback paths coming around, and that it would be hard to do that. There you go. So yeah, I mean, I think that is a big part of it.
can you explain? Are they like sort of intentional leaks, or are they sort of there to be put, thrown in or changed on the fly? Like, I mean, is there a way to control the types of feedback that are going on, or is it always
Yeah.
part of the sound anyway?
Some of them, are controllable. Others are just they're more they're kind of more activated. The higher the gain is, that kind of thing. Like you're going to hear them more as you juice the circuit harder. You're going to hear the more of the feedback. But I mean the decay is, I guess, the most basic feedback control, but it doesn't control all the feedback that can happen in there. The filter has a lot of influence over it too, especially since where it is. The absorb is another set of filters that you can use that can accentuate some of the. I mean, the idea is that they can accentuate the high frequencies or not, but in essence, because it's kind of a noisy circuit, they also serve to accentuate the noise.
Nah.
I mean, I will say this. I got to be honest with you. One of the things that made me really excited about doing this with Alessandro is that I could make something that was really noisy. And if customers were bummed out about how noisy it was, I could just point to him and say, hey, look, this is how this guy wants it.
Talk to that guy.
You know? I mean, we're generally, noise is something that can be pretty hard to, it can be pretty hard for some people, I think. And so
To
because
digest.
we're a company trying to make things that a lot of people could like and enjoy, sometimes a circuit with a lot of noise in it will get
I'm sorry,
set to the
Tony.
side.
What's the name of the company?
I was going to say that.
I
Yeah.
know, it is weird. It is weird.
Just wondering.
That is, it's ironic, but I think, part of it, I think, comes from, it's funny because I've noticed, I think it could come potentially from people working more in the box. And that's not really, like, I guess I come from being in, like, rehearsal spaces or in studios where there's a lot of noise all the time. Guitar amps making noise, like, mixers making noise. And it's just like, so the noise floor, that thing doesn't bother me as much. But yeah, when people work inside the box and then they come to something like the Strega or most modular systems, I think it can be pretty alarming to them initially to be in that physical world and have that physical noise floor that's actually there all the time, just kind of humming away. But it's just a reality of being in the real world.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I don't mind noise at all, even if it's unintentional. I mean, intentional noise, of course, but I'm from I'm old school. I started with cassette tapes and tape recorders and humming amplifiers and shit like that. So it's just part of the. I like the fact that sometimes a machine, even though it doesn't make any music, already has like this hum or noise to it, so it's there, it's already on, it's doing something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It actually improves the relationship, I feel, with an instrument if you turn it on and apart from just the lights blinking, if there is like a sort of like a almost unnoticeable but still there like thing emitting from it, it's sort
Breathing. Yeah, it's alive.
of yeah it sort of like invokes the idea of going to interact with it, like having this back and forth relationship with it.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
What was the thought process behind the touch points, though? I mean, is there a reason for their location? Is it rather random? Is it just because that's where the circuits are located? I mean,
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is. I guess it's somewhat related to where the circuits are, but also, that we were already in the form factor. The touch plates were like one of the last things that we added, I believe. I think they were, because the first prototypes didn't have them.
No.
I think we'd already committed to this zero coast form factor, which limits you obviously space wise, and I felt like there could be something else that we could do that would have this. Well, one of the things I've always noticed about Alessandro when he performs, I'm assuming he does this in the studio as well, is there's this thing in modular where people want to patch everything. They want everything to be aleatoric. So in other words, the machine is kind of set up to make the music, and then they can kind of step away. And you see this in a lot of the videos and stuff that people post with modular synthesizers. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that one thing that I noticed about Alessandro, and if you look at the backside of the first Make Noise record that he did for us, you'll see there's a hand, and there's a lot of wires coming out of that hand. And when that was drawn, the idea was that he's not afraid to actually touch the instrument. And if he wants something to happen, he will just, touch the part of the instrument that he needs to touch to make that happen, and he'll just make it happen by hand. He's not concerned with having something that's just going to operate without him. And so I was thinking there really needs to be some other manual, some other way of inducing or influencing the sounds that are happening in the Strega with your hands. And so that's why the touch points came into play. They were added at the end, but I think they were a necessary ingredient. And so their location was, to some degree, where I could fit them, and also what made the best sense as far as where the circuits were and what the points actually were.
So what functionality is on the touch plates? What do they do?
So they're modulation points, basically. The sources are called.
I'll put it up so
bridges.
people can see it.
Yeah.
And so the sources are called bridges, and those are all the circles. I'm pointing at the screen like someone could see that. The sources are called bridges, and those are all the circles. And several of those are signals that are not available anywhere else. And then the squares are the destinations. Those are called gateways. And so the idea is that you can kind of momentarily bridge these sources to the destinations. And so you can induce these momentary modulations. Actually, what he's holding up there is a prototype.
Yeah, it's the first
because there's some of the touch bridges that did not make it to the final version.
oh,
Or on
man.
that version.
Sorry.
Oh, it's fine. I'm sure people will find that interesting to see.
Oh shit, that's true.
Um,
Oh, you know
So-
why I have the prototype? Because I have the final I have on the table making music, which I can play later. And then I have another one, the second prototype in the living room doing something else. And then I have this, which is the only free one that I have. They're like I told you, they're everywhere. They're becoming like little gremlins.
You're gonna make a litter box out of one soon.
Yeah.
Lance, back with another question on the bridges subject. Is there a CV audio input to bridge on the Strega?
CV audio input.
I'm not sure what
external
bridging.
in. Like an external in?
I don't know. I'm just
I
reading
don't
the
know what
question,
bridge.
mate.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Lance, if you specify what bridge in what sense.
But it does have an audio input, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's you processing the guitar through.
I don't know about feeding Strega after midnight because
I
I
think you
never
should.
last till midnight.
I think you should. I think you should definitely feed it after midnight. Play with fire.
It multiplies.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I think maybe Lance was, I don't know if he was talking about what I was just talking about, like this idea of bridges and gateways for doing the momentary modulations, the touch plates essentially, or if he was actually meaning a way
Oh,
to
maybe,
get
yeah.
Maybe to
Maybe
maybe
it's
to maybe to manipulate the
incoming
level or
CV.
something. Yeah, exactly.
No, then there isn't. I think the bridges are dedicated to internal right? Internal CVs.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I think that is what he meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're all dedicated to internal signals that aren't available otherwise. Yeah, so the only way
What do you
get
mean
to them is
aren't
by touching
available?
them.
So there you mean there are no knobs for it? They're just
Yeah,
they
there
just
are
tap
no.
into a part of the circuit which is not available anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and now Lance is asking taking CV from somewhere else and making it a touch connection. I mean,
Yeah,
you
no.
could do that by just taking.
Oh, yeah, putting the thing in there. Not by
Yeah.
thing, I mean the cable.
Yeah. Hold the end of the cable with one hand, and then touch the gateway with the other. I know it sounds Mo's over here laughing. It's not very professional. I agree. This isn't something that.
No, we were laughing because I said put the thing on it, and then I had to specify it was the cable.
Okay, yeah, that too.
Would you say that the zero control is probably a perfect thing to go alongside with it? Did it have any influence on the design of it when you decided to like stick to the form factor?
I mean, I guess it kind of did for me. I don't know about if it did for Alessandro or not, but for me it did just because it seemed like a good idea to have some sort of CV controller for it.
Mhm.
But I don't even know. I mean, I feel like a lot of people probably will just use it without that too.
What about you, Alessandro? What sequencer or input device?
I only use it with the zero control. I use it two ways when it comes to control. I mean, and actually, I'll play a little example too, because one of the things, I mean, I think, first of all, to answer your first question, I think the zero control is the ideal controller for it, just because it looks the same family-wise. It looks like it belongs. And I have a soft spot for things that feel like an instrument, So to me, the zero control just is just kind of like Voltron. It just makes the whole thing, it's two pieces of the same entity, and so adds functionality to the Strega, allows you to to sequence certain elements that you weren't able to sequence before, obviously, to touch them with different touch points. But another way that I control Strega with is when I use external signals, is using the envelope follower from those signals to modulate elements or settings or CV points. The whole thought process behind it was that Strega was designed to be an instrument to begin with, but the way the Strega sounds and what Strega does, I wanted to be able to color and to apply to other things. And I've said this before in other interviews or other spaces, that the idea of Strega or sounds that come out of Strega is like taking an object, and it's the sonic equivalent of taking an object and putting it under the sea, leaving it there for like 30 years and then fishing it out again. It just shaves off rough edges and changes colors. Colors are more pastel. It's not as bright and tacky. And so the idea is that I'm able to apply that to incoming signals, whatever those signals could be, drums or or guitar or anything. The cool part is that, since the beginning, we thought, well, then we could actually use whatever the input is as a modulation source. So you could actually take that and use it to control certain things. So you don't have to sequence, you don't have to have a delay, a tap tempo delay. You can just use whichever source and the time of the source that you're putting in as a clocking device, when it comes to the modulations. Like, for example, like right now, I think here I have a simple guitar part. Hold on, sorry. So a guitar loop, can you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just clean going in through Strega, and then if I mix the Strega in, So now you hear basically the attacks of the guitar actually modulating the time of the delay. They're modulating the filter on the feedback. So it becomes completely different. You know, it's not a guitar anymore. You know, and this is without the built-in voice. This is just using a guitar. If I cut the guitar out, you're just left with whatever's left on the circuit, you know. And then you can add, if you want, the oscillator in too. The oscillator reminds me of there was a video game on Commodore 64 called Mission Impossible or Impossible Mission, and this reminds me of the noise that the guy was making when it died. It was all like,
I was gonna say, it sounds like the soundtrack of me driving
Like
through
this.
traffic.
hold on. Look it up. Look it up.
I think we just lost Alessandro. We'll just be tweaking.
Sorry.
tweaking
Well,
with him.
it happened on Sonic State as well. It just happens. And it's like, oh, well, no wonder it happens. It's, you know, Tony kind of designed this for me. So, of course, I just fucking lose my shit and just goodbye,
So,
everybody.
give some context behind the name that you gave to it.
Well, just like everything else off my, you know, my records, and I don't spend too much time in the sense that the names come, they make sense, done. I don't, you know, the names should be never, the names of anything artistic, whether to me, if it's a song, a composition, should never be considered on their own as completely meaningful, as in, oh, it's called Strega because this and this and this. They just have to make sense within the environment of being a label for an instrument. In my case, when I think of Strega, I'm thinking, you know, witchcraft. I'm thinking a specific vibe, a specific sound, and particularly like if I'm thinking about a visual representation, I'm thinking about the movie The Witch. That sort of witchcraft, you know, empowering, you know, a little girl to be, you know, attracted to something that they told her it's wrong, but in reality, it's not wrong. It's just different. You know what I mean? Yeah. And a sound sonically. A darker sound, you know. I don't think it's darker as in dark, fucking industrial, you know. None of that. I think it's more dark as in left in a corner for a long time, and it's in the garage for 30 years, and take it out, and things look and sound different after, you know, or an old cassette or thing. Am I making any sense? Because I think I'm losing my mind. Sorry.
I just figured it maybe had something to do with some kind of spellbounding effect that it had on you while you were just getting
No,
lost
I think,
in
well,
music
the origin of it, and I remember because I talked about this with Tony. Originally, it came from a game that kids play in Italy and in other countries called Strega Comanda Colore, which is basically a game that you play with your friends. With Strega, someone is the witch, and the witch calls a color. And the other kids, so I would say Strega calls yellow, and then the kids would have to find something yellow and touch it or be next to something yellow. If they don't, then whoever doesn't touch the color becomes the witch, and then they do the same thing. You know what I mean? So the idea was to come up with 3 different elements, Strega, Comanda, Colore, and for them to be 3 different elements. And then in the end, it became Strega, you know, as a one instrument. And then slowly the name Strega became a thing with the sound, in a sense that if I look at Strega, I go, yeah, it makes sense. To me, it makes sense, the name with the sound that comes out of the machine, you know. It is a little, you know, I don't want to say creepy because there's a negative connotation, but it's a blue instrument, you know. It can be very blue, you know. It's a very blue sound. Blue as in melancholic, you know. See, our music played Strega Comanda Colore. We all played it. A lot of us won't admit it, but we all played it.
I want to play it now, man.
I mean, fuck it. And so the world is going to shit. So, can I swear? Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, it's YouTube. Right.
What is it about the phenomenon that sound, when it's kind of disguised and, like you describe it, Alessandro, like left underwater for 30 years, somehow sounds more interesting than when it's untreated.
Emotional content. I think it's like a pair of boots that that feel broken in, and it's a pair of pants that a pair of jeans that you wore in all your life, and or a guitar that has been broken in. I think it's the same exact thing. It gives you familiarity and emotional connection to something that you feel it's warm and engulfs you and just makes you feel at home. And
history.
I think Strega, when I listen to Strega, some people might consider noise and just not being pleasant. To me, is like, if I play some of this stuff, like that noise, right? Which you wouldn't hear if it's there. But that high-pitched noise, to me, it just feels like home. It just makes me feel... It fills up the space in a very welcoming and very warm way. I mean, would I want to use it all the time? No, but you don't have to use it all the time,
Mm-hmm. Sort of like, like the visual equivalent to VHS or Polaroid or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it's also very delicate because, it's very easy, or cassettes, it's very easy. There's a whole cassette culture. There's a lot of people doing cassette loops right now, and vaguely reminding, to me at least, vaguely emotionally reminding work from, like I say, William Basinski. Forgetting that at the key of what William Basinski did, there was emotion, and those specific chord progressions that he loops trigger a specific emotion. And right now, what we're seeing when it comes to that sort of revival is just an exploitation of the tool. Like how broken can the tape get? How interesting can the pattern of the crippled, crumbled up tape can get? But at the end, the content, the emotional content of those chords playing are nowhere close to the original, inspiration. You still go back to, William Basinski's disintegration loops. You put it on and it just feels like someone melted. It's like you took opiates in a way. Just emotionally, it just melts away. Everything just melts away. And
well, it literally is. It literally is,
Yeah.
right? The tape was actually physically decaying when.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a tendency, and it happened with I'm a guitar player, so I saw it happen with people like Van Halen back in the day. Van Halen, people think that he started a shredding movement and all playing fast, but to him, it was a part of being the artist that he was, and the artist was writing songs in a band contest. The band that became Van Halen, they're that big, not because he was playing guitar that way. It's just because it was a part of an entity. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's a tendency to try to dissect what's beautiful, and turning it into a tool and overdo it to the point that we're going to get 1 or 2 years from now that people are going to fucking hate the sound of tape or the sound of, of saturation, of stuff like that, because it's been done without an emotional counterpart in a way that just becomes, if you eat lobster every fucking day, then it ain't lobster anymore. You know what I mean? Then you want to have McDonald's sometimes. Fucking.
Oh no!
I told you it would have been better if I'd never done these things, because these statements are gonna fucking haunt me forever.
No, I think it's going to sell more because of this.
Oh, I don't know about that. Yeah,
I want to make a highlight
hopefully
reel.
enough to pay for my mental institution later.
Highlight reel for sure.
We've got Robert Lipok dropping in. Have you tried it on a big sound system? This is a good question. Because that makes, we all know that makes a huge difference on how something sounds,
A lack of opportunity for big stuff.
Yeah.
That's what okay. But
no, we haven't. I mean, at least I haven't. I don't know if Tony had the chance, but I did try it on my barefoot speakers in Berlin. So that was, and actually I had Rob Lowe come into Berlin and played with the prototypes there. And I remember just staring at him. He played for like a half hour, 45 minutes. And I think I called you, Tony, or texted you. It's like, Jesus, you should be here. It just sounds incredible. Yeah. And again, stuff that I wouldn't have never done with it. I think Robert set up some feedback loop within the modules, like putting the input into the output, or vice versa. Well, it doesn't matter. But you know what I mean? Like creating a feedback loop. And and it was on the big speakers and it was rattling, and one of the few times where the red LED comes on and it's like, I don't care, it just sounds so good, who cares, fuck it, I'm gonna buy new speakers. But so I think for what I could hear in my controlled environment with big speakers, obviously they were in function ones, but it translates very well, But then again, how much of the room will have a factor in that. The bigger the speaker, the more the room is going to have to do with it,
Is there something built into the instrument which somehow controls the level? Like, because there is so much feedback involved, I can assume that some of it can get out of hand. Is there anything that manages the level?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several stages of compression actually that happen throughout, especially after the echo. There's really only one at the mixing stage, but yeah, after the echo, there's a few different areas where compression can be turned on. It's not always there. It's more like set by a threshold, but it's not something that the end user can set. These are circuits that I put into it to make it more, I guess for lack of a better word, more musical. Just something that a musician can just play and not have to. I mean, there's so the thing is that there's so many. In any given circuit, there's so many things that you can adjust, and only some of those things have a great musical value. And just because you can adjust something doesn't mean you need to put it on the panel for someone to adjust, because sometimes that result isn't going to be very dramatic, and it might even cause somebody to spend more time thinking about, oh, why isn't this doing what I wanted it to do, than good, because if they didn't spend the waste of time trying to adjust this parameter, they might be over here adjusting this other parameter that is going to give them more drama, so to speak. And I feel like these types of circuits are kind of tucked away in there just to make it more functional, so that it's not going to rip your head off, or it can still get very loud. Don't get me wrong.
I can still hear Tony,
tame instrument.
Tony going, "Whoa!" A few times when we were working on the circuit on the breadboard. Whoa! It gotten loud. That's probably when you started thinking about that stuff, because I remember there were some, especially when he came up with the idea of the filter in the loop, in the feedback. That needed to be definitely massaged, and he did a great job at that without feeling like it's constrained. It feels like it. I mean, the amount of work that is behind is probably gargantuan when it comes to how much of the massaging he did with the design, but because it was very easy for it to get out of control with the absorb and the decay and those things. It was very easy for it to go crazy, like crazy not good, crazy bad.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not usable, not feedback. Fun, just damaging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, feedback has this. There's it's like good up to a point, and I mean when I say good, I mean really good. And then there's a point, and it's such a fine line. And once you exceed that point, it's I would say it's not good. I agree with Alessandro, it's not good. And the reason is that the sound no longer has any dynamics. It just kind of becomes this wall that you can't really influence in any way. The circuit is at that point. It's taken over. It's done. So yeah, you kind of want to prevent it from getting to that point, so that it's still more manageable and more usable and more musical. So. I think it should. I obviously don't have access to a Function One here in Asheville, North Carolina, believe it or not. But it sounded good on our in-house. We have a big, I say big. I mean, I guess it's big compared to a set of home stereo speakers. We have a Bose PA system with the 2 subs and the sticks and stuff. It sounded good through that. Oh, but no Function One test yet. If somebody knows how to get into a Function One and wants to shoot some video,
I'll sort you out.
Strega. I mean, seriously,
I'll sort you out.
That would be amazing. That would be a really cool video.
I'm sure Mo can make that happen.
Yeah, as soon as you get one over here, I'll make sure I'll set up a full Function One system in a warehouse, and I'll just test it and send you a video.
Are you serious? That would be amazing.
Make that happen.
We should talk to Pete about that. That could be really cool.
Count me in.
Joel Noct is dropping in with a question. Any plans to make a case to hold all 3 of the O series?
I was going to ask the
together
same
in one
thing.
I'm
enclosure.
not sure, Joel.
Well, this is something that was good. That was excellent.
Thank you.
I'm more into the idea, if somebody wanted to produce a case, I'm more into the idea of giving them the mechanical drawings and stuff, the dimensions, so that they could do that. I feel like for us right now, I don't think we have the capacity to do it. But yeah, I mean, if anybody has like an idea for what they think a cool case could be, I would be glad to give them the dimensions and everything, the drawings, so that they could get it right.
It's
I'm,
cool.
I'm curious, Tony, like when you take off your engineering hat and you go back and just making music, what's your experience with the Strega? And have you had time to sit down and actually try to write music with it and be creative with it outside of just trying to, create a new instrument?
Are you me,
Yeah.
Mo? Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit for me there.
Yeah, Mo, can you repeat? Sorry, you were like for a second it was very muffled.
I was saying, when you take off your engineering hat, have you had a chance, like as a musician's perspective, to sit down and play with the instrument and create something with it, write music with it, outside of trying to develop a new instrument and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't? I mean, just literally sit there, get lost, and write music with it.
Yeah, I have actually with Strega more so than a lot of the previous Make Noise developments, to be honest with you.
That's interesting.
It's still sitting right here to my right. This is my little home studio. I've got a Strega and a Zero Coast and a Zero Control and a tape and microsound music machine all right here. I've been recording a bunch with the Strega. I really like it. I feel like I tend more towards making some like prettier sounds with it. I don't know why.
What are you saying, Tony?
I'm saying you're making some really ugly shit over there, man.
Okay, I just wondered what you were saying. That's fine. That's cool.
I don't know why. Maybe I've already turned a corner. I spent a bunch of time making really big, heavy drones with it and stuff, and now I'm moving into using it almost like one of my favorite things is just to turn that interference signal up just so that it's like kind of tickling the VCO pitch, and then run that and control it with the Zero Control, and it just makes this. I call it the singing saw. It's actually a patch that's in the manual. It just makes this really like beautiful voice that's perfect for any kind of melodic content. I just really like it. But yeah, if you're interested in what that sounds like, the singing saw patch, it's in the manual.
Cool, yeah. I really like those moments, man, when you are just, taking things for a spin without the pressure to make anything, you know what I mean? Just to explore the range of an instrument and just see, like driving a sports car for fun, you know what I mean? Just to see what it does when you take a corner like this, and, the same is true for instruments, I really enjoy sometimes just to sit down behind a synth and really sort of, hammer it and push it and see what extreme kind of territory I can go in, and see, what the range is, how it responds, and just enjoy the insane kind of curves and movements and interaction with different elements of the sound occur, just to enjoy it, without any plans to make music with it.
Yeah, that's one of the funnest things about getting something new in your studio is that moment that you patch it into your monitoring system and just take it for that first drive. It's a beautiful feeling.
I like the sort of expansion of a lot of modular brands like Make Noise, like yourself, to start releasing more self-contained instruments, because as much as I love modular, it takes a lot of thought and getting to know individual modules really well before you end up with a clear idea how they can be used together, and I find myself always ending up with smaller patches with just 3 or 4 really versatile modules that complement each other really well, and in fact designing an instrument, within the large range of stuff that is available, just keep to those limited amount of elements, and then just really explore that instead of just keep patching until you stumble upon something interesting. You know what I mean? So I like the self-contained versions of these modular modules basically a lot. You know, it's a sort of it sort of invites you more to develop a relationship with it. You know, to have a interaction with it straight out of the box.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. I mean, I think that is definitely. I think what you're talking about is something that attracts some people to modular, and that actually is off-putting to others. Some
Yeah,
people want that chase. They want that puzzle. It's almost like a puzzle. It's almost
yeah,
like you've got to figure out, like, how do I use all these things together? And you're right. You're basically designing an instrument every time you patch it to some degree. And then where something like the Strega or the Zero Coast, some choices have already been made for you. There's a framework. And there is some freedom that comes with a framework. As Alessandro noted, once we decided that this thing was going to be the same size as the Zero Coast, it made a bunch of things come together that maybe wouldn't have happened if we hadn't made that decision. By having that framework, we had to make some serious choices. A framework can be really positive for creativity sometimes. But I totally know what you're saying. I find myself using my Zero Coast more often than some of my other modular stuff, to be honest with you.
yeah. I guess I mean I don't mind thinking about it, and I think the whole process of thinking about a system in advance, even before you patch it in, and ask yourself the question, what if, you know, what would happen if I would do this, you know, it can be a very, really good starting point
Mm-hmm.
to get stuff going, you know, just it's like, yeah, we talked about this before. It's like a mental exercise, you know, you think about a certain patch or a certain routing or signal flow, and then that can be an inspiration to start something, or that can be just a start point in general, you know, just to get something going. And it's half the fun, you know, just thinking about what could happen is already a very enjoyable thing.
For sure, for sure. Have you ever looked at the Patch the Card game? I'm trying to
No.
think of the name right now.
Oh, it's like
Uh,
an oblique strategies for for people who get stuck with patching or something.
No
it,
way.
it is
Never
sort
seen
of,
that.
yeah. This is a fellow James Sigler created this,
I know James. Yeah.
and it's sort of like that. I mean,
Old
here I
school
can,
James.
yeah. James is great.
Yeah, he's
Um,
awesome.
Yeah, it is sort of like an oblique strategies for modular. It you choose a card and it tells you to do something. A lot of times, it's things that will destroy your patch. Sometimes it's things that make it better. You can use it to start a patch. You can use it to expand a patch. But yeah, just what you were talking about made me think of this. I've got a few
That's
of these
awesome. I
sitting
never
here.
heard of it. It's cool.
Yeah, I believe he just started printing them up. So I have a. I'm not,
Make a
I
great
think
stocking stuffer for Christmas.
they're available. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great stocking stuffer. Ooh, I can't barely get this thing
I
open.
like to
There we
think
go.
ahead and plan my holiday gifts. You know, we got a whole
Yeah,
year ahead of us.
yeah. So so it's just like here's let's see, abstraction. Create an entire patch without listening. That's actually one of my favorite ones. I love doing that. You patch everything together, then throw the headphones on and listen to what you did. It's kind of crazy. Use only half the modules in your system, chosen at random. Here's another one. Disruption. So the cards have there's abstraction, disruption, and progression. Choose a module and patch every connection into the rest of your patch. Let's see what this one says here. Unpatch all volt per octave inputs. So I guess you're right. It is kind of like an oblique strategy kind of thing. And then from the final selection, the progression. Tune your VCOs to a chord. Let's see what this one is. Turn every attenuator down by half. So all good advice, really.
Definitely, that'll keep me busy for the next week.
Yeah, you should get in touch with James and see if he has any more left. I know he sold out of the first run, but I'm sure he's going to print more at some point.
Cool.
Supply and demand.
Mo, do you have any strategies when you get stuck or need to get things going when it's not really happening?
Besides banging my head up against the wall. No, not necessarily. I mean, I have a problem with I think I've mentioned this before. I constantly tend to repeat myself in terms of patches and try to get different results. So what I've been trying to do is force myself to experiment and practice more outside of my comfort zone and try to do something opposite of what I'd usually do to try to break these stuck moments. So it's still a process for me. That makes any
Cool.
sense.
I guess so. Yeah.
Add reverb.
Yeah,
Add
exactly.
reverb. Yeah.
Just fucking throw reverb on it. It's great.
Astrarium Records is asking Alessandro about the track Las Vigilia. Is that the right? Is the
Sveglia.
right pronunciation? Okay.
Sveglia.
Yeah, it's one of his favorite tracks. Very emotional and profound. How did this track come about? What's the story behind it?
Thank you. I don't remember. I mean, there's no story behind it, really. They all came from the same batch of tracks, which I made as lullabies, if you want, to fall asleep on tour when I was on tour with Nine Inch Nails in 2013 and 14, I think. And I had a small setup with an MC. What was it? MC202. A 303, and then a delay pedal, and then they were going into a Bose Bluetooth speaker, but with a line in. So what I would do is I would just set up a sequence, and I would leave it playing like you would when you get to a hotel room when you connect your phone and listen to a record, essentially. Since we would be traveling from country to country, it'd be jet lagged, you want to take a nap, and I would just, I tend to fall asleep to other talk shows or repetitive stuff, and just not because out of boredom, it's just because it's almost meditative in a way. You just get in that state, and that's how that track, Sono Risveglio were two records that were born in the same period. That's what that track was part of, that sort of like therapeutic, fall asleep, lullaby-ish collection of tracks that I made for myself. The reason why it sounds the way it sounds is it's never a direct recording. It was always me walking around with a Zoom tape recorder around the room, or maybe with the windows open to the hotel room in Japan where there's a mess outside, or finding a spot in the room where that specific sequence gave me more, maximum emotional connection, like where I felt like, oh, it sounds great here. I feel like, kind of like when you go to a show and you find a corner where it sounds better. It's like the same exact thing. And then I would just let it record.
So you're saying this whole thing is a mic'd recording. There's no layer of original source involved or anything. It's all mic'd.
I mean, not all tracks were done the same, and they were all done in different countries. So I never kept track of. Since they were for immediate consumption or for consumption during that time, I didn't really think about documented what I did, simply because I was happy with the result. Once you reach a goal, you're not really too concerned about how you reached it, because you reached it already. And so I mean, I know that for a fact. That one for a fact is, it was pretty much, I think. There might have been an extra pedal in that one, which is vinyl. I can't remember the name of it. Do I have it here? No. Can't remember if it was going through a vinyl pedal or not. But anyway, so yeah, it was the concept behind it was, recording lullabies to fall asleep to.
Awesome.
Puts me to sleep.
Good. That's what it was designed to do.
And I mean that in a good way too. I mean, it's
yeah.
The album in particular is perfect for just, reaching those deep meditative levels.
Yeah, relax, not think about, the bad stuff, just let yourself be.
Whenever you have such a idea, like a concept, do you stick to it until you have like a body of work that is presentable, or is it something you work on in stages in between things and then collect everything you've done over the years that kind of fits the same idea? Are you so disciplined that you can actually finish something like that when you set yourself to it?
I never see what people see and buy as a record of mine. I never see as a record or as a body of work or as a something that needs to be finished. Just like the instrument, it becomes what it is at the very end. So something like Sono Risveglio weren't Sono Risveglio. They were recordings that I made for myself that Dominic Ferno from Hospital Productions, oh my God, today is not, it's just not today. But Dominic or Prurient, he listened to them and he goes, we got to release this. And I was like, release what? This is just stuff that I fall asleep to. There was no idea of it being, oh, I'm going to do this record and the story is going to be the, you know, Hospital Productions, by the way. It's going to be, you know, a record about, the story is going to be, I'm going to fall asleep to it. People are going to, you know, there was no narrative to it. It was literally, I think throughout the years, I've finally been able to kind of hit the jackpot personally, where I find a connection. I'm making music for myself. I'm making music to feel better. I'm making music because it makes me feel a way that nothing else in the world makes me feel like. It fixes things that nothing else fixes. It puts me in a state that nothing else puts me into. And the moment that I've reached this direct connection with making music is the moment that I've been able for that music to become something that, if you want, I sell or like I give to people. And I think the fact that it's so purely connected to who I am and what I make it for, it translates to people listening to it. So I think it makes it even more emotional for them in the end. And so when they use it, it's kind of like, you know, if you're making a meal for your family and somebody comes over and they tries, it's like, wow, this is awesome, you know, and you bring some home. Hardly ever you're going to be able to find that specific meal at a shop or a restaurant because it was made by someone who's made it for its own family with ingredients for a recipe that has been, you know what I mean? It's just something more personal and more, fuck, sometimes I know I'm going to listen to this part and go like, that dude is high. But I'm not, you know, I'm not high. But what I'm saying is just,
makes perfect
you know,
sense.
it's very, I stopped thinking about releasing a record and I'm going to, oh fuck, I got to work. I mean, the whole stress linked to making music, it's completely gone for me. Like, oh, I got to finish this record. None of that exists anymore. When it's going to, like, for example, the last year, I've been extremely lucky to being able to, you know, to partly sustain myself since the shows were gone with Bandcamp. But I haven't written any music. The previous years, I've done music every day for myself. I recorded every day, you know, 1 hour, 5 minutes, 2 hours, 12 hours, whatever, you know, because I like being in the studio and just tweak stuff. You know, I would press record in my sound card, computer off. Just the sound card has a multi-track recorder built in. And then what happens is that, you know, 3 years later, you have 4 terabytes of music that you don't remember making for the most part. You know, and so last year I spent the creative part wasn't making the music, was to go back and go, holy shit, I fucking don't remember making any of this, or maybe not any of it, but you know, there were certain things that you become surprised because they were made in such a personal, enjoyable, fun state of just being happy to be making music and feeling like you were doing something. And then the thing is that these ideas or these concepts, and some of them were flushed out, you know, some of them less flushed out, but they sort of gravitate next to another and they, you know, kind of like magnets. Some of them were all made on the same instrument, but apart in the years. Some of them were my first modular experiments ever. Some were some other synthy things that I made during a weekend on a trip, you know, like stuff like that. But they all became releases, you know.
Yeah.
After the fact,
I relate to that totally, man. It's actually the whole place where I'm here is set up just to encourage that way of working. You know, it's basically, you know, there's like a table in the middle where I build a setup for every you know, occasion, basically just gathering things, and the recording button is always on. And whether I'm collaborating with people or just recording synths just for fun, it's always recording. And it's in a way it's a little bit like taking the stress away from having to produce something or meeting a deadline or, you know, thinking about your work as a format, you know. So basically the whole concept here is just document whatever is happening, and then afterwards, you know, to see if there's anything releasable. and it's a really liberating
I
way.
mean,
Of,
everything is releasable. You know, I mean, I don't. You
Yeah,
know,
sure, of course.
the moment that I think that I personally go with my stuff, everything I think is releasable in the sense I wouldn't have made it if I didn't think I wanted to listen to it personally. You know, like I stop recording if something doesn't inspire me. So I think that buffer has moved from the end of the recording process to the creation. Like that buffer now is at the beginning. You know what I mean?
Can I
And
ask you
this
two
came
something?
it didn't come like in one day, obviously, but I think at the beginning, we all grow up with the concept of demo. So you grow up that like you have this great idea that makes you feel super excited about what you just made, but somehow you already know it's a demo. And so it was years of trying to fucking wash that concept away from myself and just go, no, it's not written anywhere that the first thing is a demo. You can gain confidence and build towards gaining confidence in what you write at that moment for that to become the final thing. It's not written anywhere. That doesn't mean that it can't be rearranged or reworked, but that's in function of how you feel about it. If it doesn't satisfy you, then you add to it or redo it or change the sound, of course. I'm not saying that you don't have to do that.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I said releasable. It's like you do a lot of things and you gather, you accumulate all this material. And with releasable, I mean, okay, so you find things on your hard disk, or you remember these moments and you go back to them, and you kind of play the curator at some point. Okay, this works, this doesn't work, and then you sort of assemble it into something which is not releasable, but can be enjoyed by other people the way you felt when you were making it.
Can I ask you two something?
Sure.
When you're digging through and you found, like, say, for example, something that you recorded a year ago, and you don't even remember making it, and you throw that up and you start playing it back, are you then? You're kind of at that point. Are you remixing it? Are you adding things to it? Or is it just done already, and you're just deciding whether or not it's worth
everything
putting it out there?
Yeah, all of them can happen. Sometimes it's like,
It doesn't.
why didn't I notice this when it happened? And it's done. It's pretty much a surprise. Okay, this exists. I didn't even know about it, and it's like it's fine as it is. And sometimes you find things and you think, okay, well, if I put it in this other context, or I layer it with whatever, makes sort of enhance the idea or something, to make the idea stronger, to give it more identity, or to give it more body or whatever. It can be sonically, but it can also be musically. You can change it, but I never go back to things which are just slightly exciting. It needs to be there, almost there. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I just move on to something else which is already almost there.
There's
Question
also
to-
the
question to you,
situation.
Oh, sorry, Mo.
No,
Go on.
go ahead.
No, I was wondering, since we're talking about sort of making things happen in the studio. We all have our strategies, and we have we use stuff which was not intended for something, or we use happy accidents. That's typical things that everybody deals with who was working in the studio, right? Do these things happen to you when you are working on some circuit and you stumble upon a functionality that might be an accident but becomes really usable later on in a product?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, one of the things I think you have, and I'm sure that I think this plays into exactly what you're talking about as well, both of you. You have to be, in your case, you have to be listening with very open ears to recognize that special moment and realize, oh, this is something that's worth hitting the record button for, or this is something that's worth dredging out of the very bottom of this hard drive and making a proper mix of it. I mean, you just have to have your eyes open all the time. You can't just use the technology the way the company that made the technology is instructing you to use it. I mean, sometimes you have to do that. In the case of, like, say, a power supply, you kind of want a power supply to work. But other times, in the perfect case is with this Strega, the PT2399 IC is used far outside of the suggested, or I mean, it's not even really suggested, it's a stated range. I wasn't sure what was going to happen when I started applying some of the voltages that I applied to it. I thought it should be okay, but I wasn't totally certain. And in fact, I left the circuit powered on for several weeks just because I was concerned. Like, it's not stated on the data sheet that this IC should be used in this way. So do I need to be concerned? Oh, well, I'll leave it on for 2 weeks, make sure it doesn't turn into the magic smoke. So back to your original question, though, I think just kind of sometimes you do connect things wrong, and sometimes you touch the end of a resistor and something happens, and being receptive to that moment and saying, wait, that was strange. Why did that envelope, why did it re-trigger 3 times when I touched this? Now let's have a closer look at this. Grab the scope probe and start investigating and start figuring out why this thing happened when you touch this other thing. It's not supposed to happen, but it did. That's the other thing. Textbooks lay everything out in this really neat, really just wonderful way where everything is so predictable. And you look at a data sheet for an IC and it's all there and it's beautiful and it's very controlled and you feel like all is well. Then you actually start putting things into the real world, and there's all these outside influences that can make things not work the way the data sheet said it should work. And so you also have to work with those things too. Sometimes they're good things, and sometimes they're battles that you have to fight in order to get to the end result. But yeah, I think it's very similar to what you're talking about.
My social life.
What was that? Mom?
Sometimes they're goodles, sometimes they're battles.
I said it's a striking resemblance to my social life.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Alessandro, when you dredge up those tracks off that hard drive, are you ever adding things to them? It sounds like I keep wanting to call you Speedy J, but I guess it's just Joachim, right?
Joachim, yeah.
Joachim,
but
okay.
Yeah, whatever you want.
So
what,
it sounds like you do add things sometimes, and you do actually almost remix a track sometimes. But I have a feeling Alessandro is just, it's done and done, or is it not?
Yeah, I'm looking now.
Yeah,
most of the work, yes. Most of the work that I do to them is just to make them, they might have been done in different periods of my life in different studios. So at the end, I want them to, to feel like they're part of the same. It's like a good meal. Like you might go to a restaurant and you get served a fresh, organic, let's say steak if you eat meat, whatever, but it's paired to, with pickled stuff that has been pickled for years, and then you get this wine from 1978 or something like these elements are all from different years, but together they make this meal that makes sense. They're all presented in a way that it doesn't matter. You're not drinking the wine in the cellar. You're not eating the beef off the cow. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's all presented. So the idea of the record is to sort of, it's like the last layer of paint that makes them all belong. Yeah. They already belong because they obviously there's a common thread, to me at least. But then the artwork, the titles, the names, it all consolidates, them into one tangible, consumable size product. And I hate to say product, but
Jeez, I'm starting to feel like I'm the only one who goes back and listens to things that I've recorded that I've forgotten and think to myself, like, what the fuck was I thinking? This is just absolute garbage.
I mean, I'm not saying they're all good. All I'm saying is,
right.
But it's all different. Like, for example, I went back. The first thing that I released was this thing called Prime Cose, which means first things in Italian. And it's the first modular stuff that I recorded in 2001 or 2002. I can remember when I got my first modular, which was an analog system, right? And that's a fraction of the things that I found. Some of them blew me away because, at the time I was still coming from being a songwriter and having a band. So you're thinking about, spending 8 minutes on a sequence and changing a few knobs as something that eventually you're going to grab a loop and use that in a song. You're not going to use those 8 minutes. But, Alessandro now goes back to that and goes, holy shit, I kind of knew already where I wanted to go back then in this track. Then obviously there's other ones who I think there's one that is like 15 minutes of ring mod. And it's like, yeah, it's a ring mod. Stop. So there's stuff but I never go back going, you always have to put it in context, I think. You go back and see, this was an exploration period, or I was trying to learn how this instrument worked, or I was trying to emulate somebody else, or you know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
it's I try to be healthier when I go back to my stuff instead of being critical about it, because it has a place. It's always creativity, so it comes from a place that it's not. I don't think it deserves criticism, in general.
No, but it's the process you describe. Like you say, this comes from trying to learn a certain instrument or something. Maybe that was the mindset when. I mean, I recognize this happens to me. The mindset would be, okay, I'm going to explore what this thing can do, and I'm not going to do anything fancy with it musically. But then, because you're not thinking about it, really interesting things happen.
Yeah.
Musically also sometimes too. So it's.
Yeah, because you're playing around, so you're having fun.
Yeah, exactly. You're very intuitive. You're just acting in the moment and not really thinking about things. And a lot of beautiful things were made by people who were not really thinking about what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to me, it was more like what Mo was saying, because he says it goes back to his stuff and it kind of feels, I don't know how he said it, but not too happy about listening to some of the old stuff. And that happened to me a lot with like when I was listening to my like demos or songs where I was singing or stuff like that, simply because I know that I wasn't a good singer, or that would have been a creative path that I would have followed later on. But now I'm able to go back to it and see it. Well, that was simply another tile on the road. You know what I mean? Of where I'm going, and it's not like I arrived anywhere yet. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing where I'll go. Fuck it, I'm gonna grow in a beer. I'm probably gonna get acoustic guitar and I'll be fucking Cat Stevens from now on. As far as I'm concerned, you don't know. But what I'm saying is, I feel much better about where I've been if I see it as a step of where I'm going, or where I've come now and where I'll be going. It's less frustrating, because I remember feeling like Mo is saying, going back to some of my stuff, like, holy shit, this sounds fuck. I hope no one finds this, or listens to it. Now it's just,
I ask myself
it's
sometimes. Yeah, I ask myself sometimes: is it, in my case, is it a lack of courage, or a lack of discipline, that I really enjoy making music just in a way that I go with the flow and just having fun in improvising. Is this something that I do because I'm not bothered to just spend slaving over something and working really hard to make it into something which it is not,
Well, you see, that's the thing. If you're good at it, I mean, the thing is, most people that do something and work hours on something to make it sound a certain way, if you ask them, they're not going to tell you, I worked my ass off for this record, ever. It came natural to them. They had it in their mind slowly, and that was a process they would have gone through whether you liked it or not, because that's what it took for them to manifest what they want to. I'm not saying it was pleasant, but they'd go, like, if talking about designing the instrument, I don't think, even though there were ups and downs, I don't think Tony will tell you it was a stressful period. I think we both could say it was a very positive process, but it was a lot of work. It was 3 years, It's a lot of time, off and on. Obviously, we all had other things. Now, if it would have been a toxic or not ideal environment to work on, comparable to having to chisel a record to make it sound what you think you want, and it becomes a stress, then it wouldn't have been the same. It would have been a stressful situation. The result would have been different. I mean, I think the complexity is always seen from the outside world looking in as sacrifice. But when it's a natural step, like to you, I mean, some people will look at you and hear the stuff that you do live and go, how the fuck does he do that live? How can he come up with so many things on the spot? But to you it comes natural because it's part of your creative process, But you look at people that spend, 48 hours a day, tweaking a kick drum, or you know what I mean, like, or layers with fucking 55 kick drums, or you know what I mean, like stuff like that, which I'm not trying to talk shit about. I'm just saying it's alien to me. But to them it's just a way of being, it's just, that's what's required for them to feel good about the things, like.
No,
Yeah,
right.
I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think we're so handicapped by the fact that there's a business and there's a need to make a living with what we do at the end of the process. Because if it would be a fact where we didn't have to pay the bills, not to make any money, and it all be like we make music for ourselves, the output would be completely different all the time. It would be there wouldn't be any immediate afterthought of what this is going to become product-wise. You know what I mean? And I think that influences it. It's become so much. It's been coming up like a salmon going up the river. You know, it's been coming up earlier and earlier. Now that it's there from the moment you sit down to fucking come up with an idea. And especially nowadays where your outcome, your product is going to bring back much less than it used to. And we can't play shows. Now we're completely fucked, for lack of a better, description.
So you might as well enjoy yourself.
So you might as well do
Right.
stuff that makes you happy, because at the end of the day, you are the only one that can make you happy as you can with music the way you do. And I think it's the fact that you're able to be creative, making music and feeling good about it. It's such a unique and very peculiar, gift to have. Not as in talent. I'm just saying to be able to create something for yourself, whether it's painting, whether it's cooking, whatever it is, creativity. Creativity should never be in function of money. Money should be a consequence of creativity, independent of what the creativity is. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Ideally, obviously,
That's very well put.
It's well put, and it's very true, and I feel exactly the same. But we are in the position, to, after all the like the long road to get there, and in a position that you still are able to make a living, even though it's we're not doing shows or anything. But I feel it's still privileged,
Oh, of course. I mean, I'd be silly not to tell you, that ears with 9-inch nails wouldn't allow me to have a stage that allowed me to make music the way that I wanted to. But also, I cannot tell you how things that would have been different. I can't, because
True.
that's not how it went. What I can tell you is that it came a point where also I left that band because I didn't feel like it was good for me at the time. Where I decided that years and years that I spent making a band or making music under Mod Will Mood or Gift, whatever the names of the bands were, that it wasn't where I wanted to be after I invested so much money and creativity into them. And that I built a studio that it was perfect, and I spent days just pressing the space bar and see that everything would sync up and make no music, until I took a piece out of there, putting on the floor, and started making music under a skylight, and that became, the Forces series, and just making music for myself. When I made that connection of making music for myself, that opened the gates, really. And it wasn't like, oh, fuck, this is the thing I'm going to release. This is going to be, I'm just going to be Alessandro Cortini and just going to, no. It was actually a funny story. I kind of make these things on the easel, and then the label I was interested in releasing it on was Cranky, because Tim Hacker was on it, Belong, which were some of the artists that I related the most at the time were on that label. And Cranky at the beginning was interested, and then they sort of dragged me along for years. They made me edit the stuff in a certain way, and the easel pieces were long. They just, because they felt right long, they made me edit them down to like song length, and then less of them, and then decided not to release them. He said, no, it's not for us. I don't think it's good enough, or whatever the fuck he said. Ezra Bukla, Don's son, was at my place one day, and I played him some of the stuff. And he said, well, you should play it to John at Important Records. And I said, well, that's cool. I didn't know who he was. I mean, I knew Important Records that had, Leon Radig and, these names that are like, yeah, right, he's going to release my stuff. And then that night, I won an auction for an Alan Strange synthesis book, right? So I went to pay, and the PayPal address was John at Important Records. So I bought it from John.
That's crazy.
So I told them, hey, man, the same night, I want that auction. And I still have,
Strega
actually,
voodoo.
I saved the PDF of the page. And so I sent him a message saying, hey, here's the money. I hope it's not inappropriate to talk about this. Just kind of swing my like a demo tape while I'm paying for an auction. Well, I paid pretty good for the book, so I think he would have given a listen out of, politeness. But moral of the story is that he loved the stuff, asked for more. And instead of adding, like a 35-minute edited record out on a label, he said, no, I completely agree. It should be a double record, and we should do a series. So it became 3 double records in the end, and now we're working towards doing a box set, and and whatnot. So all I'm saying is that it was never a plan. And I hate to sound so new agey because everybody could go, well, yeah, I mean, it was Nine Inch Nails. It's easy to be new agey when, no, there was a time where I wasn't. And we are in Nine Inch Nails only when we tour. The 4 years we don't do anything. It's, you know what I mean? It's not work. We're not making money. It's not, they're just, they're just there. They're just there in a bathtub full of money, and they don't care about what happens in the world. No, we're, you got to find stuff to do. You gotta, exactly. You gotta find stuff to do. But it came out of a personal need. I realized that I felt better making music that way, and then things started moving that way. Just like with the Hospital Productions, with Dominic listening to the stuff that I made for me to fall asleep. You know what I mean? And he wanted to release it. When he said that he wanted to release it, to me it was almost like, release what? It's it's such a personal thing. Not that I was afraid, I just didn't make the connection, and that's where it really clicked for me. And that was sort of like the record where I started playing shows proper, on the Sono album, and then moved to Berlin, and then and then everything, and then here we are.
Awesome, wise words.
I don't know about that, but sorry. How long was that? 45 minutes?
No, it was like barely 5 minutes, man.
Tony, I'm curious as to like what your history is with music and writing music, and your process. If you still find time amongst running Make Noise to actually focus on your own stuff and do your thing.
Yeah, I played him. I played him. I'm a kid. I'm like probably all of you all. I got into music at a really young age, and I played in bands and we toured. Not so successfully, obviously. And then there was a point I was living up in New York City, and Kelly asked me what did I want to do? What was the job that I wanted to do? And I said, well, I want to work for a company that makes analog synthesizers. And she said, well, where are that? And at that time, I don't even know if DSI was open yet, but it was just Moog or Buchla. So I called both places.
Moogla.
Yeah, it was Moogla. Not so well-known company anymore. But I guess what I'm saying is like I played music a lot, and then once I got into the industry of making musical instruments, for a long time, especially when Make Noise started. I mean, really, when Make Noise started, I just couldn't find the time to make music anymore as much. And it became really hard because it was a lot of work, especially in the first 6-7 years. Was 6-7 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day. So by the time that was all done, I just wanted some silence, honestly. So I was not making music at all.
Tony, what I'm wondering, since you have quite a lot of experience making music and now are an instrument maker, I think it's extraordinary you can switch or flip between the sort of right brain, left brain kind of activities with so easily. I mean, I think most people are either or, you know what I mean? Like they either have like the brain to think of things systematically and more mathematically and stuff, and other people are more on the sort of creative side, you know what I mean? So can you switch easily between them, or can you do both still?
Well, it is hard. It does get harder to do it. But in the last year, I've been making music again a lot more, like all the time, and I'm really enjoying that. But now it's getting harder to jump back into the more system, I guess, the engineering mind. But it's not totally impossible. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of times during the design process, at least for me, a lot of that is making music. I mean, it's making music more in the way that you all are talking about, where you're talking about you have this table where you just pull a bunch of stuff down off the shelf and start playing it in and see where you go. When you're testing a circuit or developing a circuit, a lot of times I'm making music with it for too long. Honestly, sometimes I look and I realize, oh my God, I was supposed to get all these things done today. I was supposed to get this this bomb edited, and I was supposed to capture this part of the schematic, and it's already 4 o'clock, and I've just been playing with this circuit for the last 4 hours. And sometimes that's good because that helps you understand it better and come up with ideas for how to make it better, or just ideas for how to explain it to people. But sometimes you really should stop playing and actually get the work done that you need to get done, so that things can be built and created for musicians like yourself. So it is I think it is a trick to flip that switch between those two worlds. There is some crossover too, though. I believe there is some crossover, and I think thinking like a musician can help you develop things that musicians can get more out of. If you just think purely from an engineering standpoint, I mean, I think the number one goal a lot of times is to get the maximum power from any given technology. What's the latest, greatest technology, and how can we maximize its potential is I think a very modern way, or a very engineering way of looking at something. Whereas from a musical perspective, you might be trying to think, well, how can I present this technology in the way that's the most inspiring and fun and inviting, most musical way to present this technology. So I guess those are two pretty different things, and kind of got to have a foot in both. So
That's definitely interesting. Yeah, because you want to end up with something that is enabling people. Oh, question from Catfax. You want to get into that, Tony?
no, I mean, it's funny because there's a fellow
Goddamn idiots.
suit and tie guy has
So good.
I remember a long time ago, the first time I met him, he had asked me if he said, "Why did you call your company Make Noise? You've already got the perfect name for a synth company, Rolando." And I thought, oh man, that would be a mess.
I can see the T-shirts.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Just a
Like
Roland logo, and then just O with a Sharpie.
Yeah, straw Sharpie. Yeah, right, yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're nearing the 2 hours. Usually we can continue if you want, but usually near the 2 hour mark, we give people a little opportunity to promote the stuff they're doing, or to talk about the things that they've got coming up that they want people to know about. Maybe we should get into that and start with Mo. Mo, what's up? What are you doing? Anything we...
Just chiseling away at the next Belief Defect album, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that video you sent me, man, that was of the set, that was astonishing. That was really good. Really enjoyed that.
The Reactor guys restreamed our last Belief Defect performance from Catharsis Festival on their channel. It's still up there for archived if anyone wants to go to the Reactor YouTube channel and check it out. But it was the last time I was in the studio with Luis was almost a year to date. And, we worked, I would say half the album was finished. And we thought, well, the other half should be fairly easy, through this pandemic to work online together and try to get this hashed out. But it's actually proven to be more challenging.
Because of the distance?
Yeah, just because of the distance.
Yeah.
I mean, we set up like an online environment with Discord where we can kind of communicate with each other, share each other's screens and ideas, but the chemistry is missing. And the way we work together and the process, it just hasn't been the same, but we've been chiseling away at it and it's been fun. Definitely learned a lot of new techniques, and we're getting closer and closer to the end. So I don't have anything to announce in the immediate, but I hopefully by the end of this year, this album is going to be released and finished. So
in the
Great.
pipeline.
I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Nice, man. Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, man.
Cool. And Tony, obviously we're talking about Strega. Anything else you've got coming up? Because isn't NAM now, or is it already just been there? What is it?
No, just happened. Yeah,
Just happened.
Just
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, there wasn't much to it this year though, just because it was virtual only.
Yeah.
But the Strega is a big thing for Make Noise. And I myself have a couple of records coming out this year too. One is going to come out on a label called Adventures that's run by Rob Lowe and Rose. I guess it's an imprint.
That's great.
Speaking. So I'm excited about that. And then another one I just got mastered I just got the masters back today. I don't know how I'm going to release that. Maybe just put it on a Bandcamp page or something. It's all pretty new to me, so I haven't made any music in about at least 12 or 13 years. So I don't. Things have changed a lot since then. But yeah, that was like, those are the things that I'm excited about. The Strega.
Yeah, it must be exciting if it's been such a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the Strega and making some music. That's pretty much. I mean, that's a lot. So I'm excited about that.
I want to add some public pressure and remind you to keep the Make Noise label running. Keep making records.
That was actually such a good idea, man. You know, having people, sending people the instrument and then having them perform and release those recordings. It's a really nice idea. It's awesome. That's what
Yeah,
you're talking about, right, Mo?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree. The record label became a lot of work, and so that's the reason why we put it on pause. It got to the point. I mean, it's just I mean, as you know, putting out records it's a lot of work, and it was juggling that and then the company, which was basically paying for the whole thing because the records weren't really generating that much income because the quantities were pretty low, so they weren't really even paying for themselves. So it was like this thing of like, which one do we do, and it kind of fell to the wayside, I guess. Mo had mentioned maybe restarting it as a Bandcamp page, which could be fun.
Yeah,
but I'd have to chase
or
down
sell
all
them
the
as USB
artists.
sticks or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Cheaper to mail.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. No, it's good. It was a really great idea. Cool. So, any dates for the release?
I think the one on Adventures is in March, and then the other one, I don't know. I got the masters back. There's this artist that I found that I really liked their art. I was gonna have them do some art and I guess just put it on YouTube or something. I don't know how things. Honestly, I don't know how things work. So I'd probably just. I mean, some people say YouTube's a bad place to put music. I don't know. I kind of just want to put it out there and let people check it out.
If you just want to get, if you just want to make it discoverable or findable, then YouTube is probably a good one, because it's a search engine basically,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I personally don't use YouTube, but I guess that's the other thing.
But the kids do.
Exactly. Like, people use it. I don't use it, but people use it. But
Yeah.
I also don't use. It's funny. I buy stuff on Bandcamp all the time, but I very rarely actually use the Bandcamp app. So I struggle with that too. It's like I have all these Bandcamp releases but I don't play them enough because the app doesn't work super well on my phone. So I end up not listening to them as much as I would like to.
I think it's time to upgrade the phone.
Maybe that is true. Yeah. That could be part of it. I don't know.
It's great that you're supporting the artist, though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I understand Bandcamp is great in that way. It's kind of crazy. I guess Alessandro was talking about they have now like a direct to vinyl thing where if enough people support a release, then they'll print a record of it. I mean, I don't know what the quality of the records is, but I mean, that's kind of an amazing concept.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they pull out with that as well.
Do any of you know anyone who's have you bought a record like that yet?
No.
Actually, we make them. We've got a vinyl room here, and all the stuff that is everything. We basically, the store is about documenting whatever happens in this room, right? So the idea is just to get away from having to press your 1,000 or 500 copies and break even and stuff like that, So we got a lathe, and we sell anything that I think is interesting to have on vinyl, or that I want to have on, a physical medium, like having it in your hand, and putting it on yourself. We just got them, and we got it to vinyl to a maximum of 50 copies. So it's really, really small quantities, but it also allows you to basically release anything that is, you don't have to think about, I need to have this A side because it needs to sell to a certain crowd or whatever, you can just release whatever the fuck you want. And it's a really liberating thing. And, stuff that gets dismissed sometimes because you don't find the right place for it, or you think, it might not be speaking to a wide audience, you can still, if I think it's precious, I still release it, you know what I mean? So that's the solution we got. And it works. It's great.
Yeah.
So, Alessandro, anything you want to make people aware of apart from the synth?
Well, there's new music coming out, and there'll be another record soon. A mute. Mid-year, I believe. And more Bandcamp.
Bandcamp.
And the Force box set is, hopefully we're going to finish it and release it soon. I mean, it's finished. It really, I'm responsible for it being late because I just couldn't find certain files, and you know, like the last year has been a bummer for everyone, and both generally speaking and personally. So it kind of slowed me down. I'm doing a lot of things, and then the move, but just making music, you know. And aside from that, I'm working on a video game score. And on a little movie. That I can't talk about it either, but I'm keeping busy. It's fun. I really enjoy the video game. To be honest, I've been a gamer. I mean, I was born, in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and I have two thumbs. So of course, I've been a gamer all my life, and it's been such a cool thing to make music for video games. And I was, lucky enough to work with my friend Alan Johannes on the Ubisoft game Ghost Recon together, and we did the score for that. Norm Block as well. And I've worked on stuff for Sony and some other stuff. We did a trailer with Ben Frost for another video game. And I just like the idea of video game music, since it's so dependent to the way the player plays the game, as opposed to scoring, which is something a little bit more fixed and orchestrated, not orchestrated, but like arranged for a specific length. And with today's technology, the music that you write is gets arranged in real time according to the playing style. So a lot of the times I'm writing moods or writing things that then will be mixed by the game itself while the player plays it, and I think that's extremely exciting because it makes you write in a completely different way.
Yeah, it does. Is there a way you can check yourself how the possible combinations would
No,
work
you
out?
kind of know about them, like you discuss with the designer, with the lead designers about what they want to achieve. The way that it works right now is like, give me references. Sometimes it's my own music as reference in specific levels. I kind of get the vibe and I say, all right, so this is the multi-track. These are the parts that I have. I think when you have this kind of mood coming, you could bring in this bus or this stem. And then it might say, yes, but maybe can you do it this way or that? Then there's a back and forth, but it's a very common ground to discuss. It's a lot of fun. I find it... I don't know if I would... Yeah, definitely I find it more exciting than scoring. I haven't scored many movies, so I can't tell you. But it's less daunting. It feels more like it's my field, my playing field, where I feel...
So
where I can be more myself.
It's essentially making a library then, more than scoring.
No, you're still making compositions. I mean, it really depends what a library is. I mean, a library is something that someone else would use, to make music. It's not necessarily what a video game will. I mean, it's still your music being presented, so it's not really a library per se. A library, it's not made of elements that needs to be, linked together. It's just separate elements. It's more like multi-tracks that get mixed and remixed over and over and over according to what the player is doing. So, for example, say it's like a game like Ghost Recon, for example, right? There's parts where you're just exploring an enemy base, and there's a specific stealthy music going on. And then one of the soldiers sees you from afar, right? So there's an element of awareness. That's where a certain element that we recorded comes in, or maybe a sequence is a little, a little darker or a little bit more like sinister, or something like that hints that something has changed, you know what I mean? And then once, combat is triggered, other elements like real drums might be coming in, or other things might be coming in, or like whatever the synth part that I recorded was, now it gets doubled and going through chorus, and it's like stereo in your face, you know what I mean? Like things like that. But these elements, if you were to play them all at the same time, it'd be a super busy multi-track. The software is mixing them in real time, and the orchestrator or the director is the player, essentially. Unconsciously, obviously, because it's in function of its playing style. Because it used to be where, if you played the game that I played and you'd be on a specific level, you could be on that level for 5 minutes, I could be on that level for 7 minutes, and then if the piece of music was 5 minutes, then it would just loop, It was just like scoring, but instead of being a fixed scene, if you were stuck in a level, then you just hear the same thing over and over. That's why sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night with like some old video game, from when I grew up in my mind, because like I just spent too much time on that one. And now the cool thing is that, the software allows the music to be, I don't want to say elastic, but to be arranged in real time. So you would get a score different from mine from that specific level. You get a different soundtrack that is tailored to your gameplay style. And I think that's very very interesting. And there's a question asking if I will be using Strega on this. I've been using Strega on everything since I got the prototype. So
I think you used it on another game soundtrack already, right?
yes, yeah. It's it's not hard to understand. It's an instrument that was designed to a certain extent for me, or for what I like to get out of stuff. So to me, it's the first thing I get to. I mean, right now my setup is fairly, I don't want to say basic, because it's still very, very deep instruments. But I have a Strega and a No Coast, and then they're right next to a Waldorf Iridium or Quantum, depending on the day. And the Strega goes through the input of the Iridium, and sometimes it's just bounced, not bounced, but going direct into the sound card that way. Sometimes I sample the Strega into the Iridium, and then I can do some, like granular stuff, or just simply mangle it even more if I want to. But it also allows me to build a library on the Quantum of personal sounds based on the Strega stuff, which is great,
Oh, I'm
So
really
this-
impressed with your capacity to keep a secret for 3 years. I never heard of.
Well, it wasn't in our, I can't really say anything on our group, because, first time you say something and Richard is involved, Richard Devine is going to talk about it right away. You can't. Richard is like a child in that point of view. It's like, it's so excited. It's very enviable how he gets excited about stuff. Because sometimes I'm like, fuck, man, I don't know how you do it, because I feel tired just looking at that piece of gear. Just looking at it, I feel tired. It tires me. Take some knobs out.
Yeah.
Take the screen off. I get anxiety. Like some of the stuff that he does, it's like, man, I need a Xanax.
Yeah.
He's cyborg.
Some of the gear that Richard is able to to approach and just be creative with.
He's a cyborg for sure.
He is
He's
just
definitely on a different level.
yeah. He is definitely he has a level of curiosity that that is I'm fazed by anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm curious, but then there's
never-ending.
like anxiety, like a doorman, like a security. He goes, no, wait, no, hold on, no, you can't
Stop there.
stop there. Anxiety, no, you're not dressed like that. No, you can't.
Hey, Alessandro, is the Bandcamp stuff going to be more of what you were talking about earlier, where you're going through these old
Yes.
files and finding things?
There's lots of more stuff that I'd like to release. I still don't know if there'll be one coming out this Friday or not, because I haven't had the chance to go to all. I also don't know if I just want to release it to release it. It's not the point. I mean, if I have something that I feel like makes sense with the stuff that I released already, then I will release it. But I have a few releases ready to go that can go on Bandcamp. I just don't know if it's the right time or not.
Awesome. We'll keep an eye out, man, for sure. I think unless anybody has some urgent things to drop in, I think we should call it a day. Otherwise, the audio will be too long to turn into a podcast, because we have limited space.
It was great, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank
it was a
you.
pleasure.
Absolutely. I learned a lot, like on every episode, talking to inspiring people. It's a real pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for
I
letting me
have-
be a fly on the wall today.
Sorry, Mo. Yeah. Well, you're welcome back anytime, man. You know
of
that.
course.
I'll do just one more housekeeping shout out, and that's I want to make people aware of our Discord server, which is becoming this really nice community of music makers, people who are um, Richard. Okay. All right. Well, I'll let you answer the question.
Man, I wish I could just go down to Atlanta and give it to you. I don't know.
Look at the
that's all
pressure.
I
Look
can
at the
say,
pressure,
Rich.
man.
I don't
Patience,
know.
Richard. Patience is a virtue. Anyway, so our Discord server, have a look there if you're interested in conversations like this. You know, it's a bunch of knob twiddlers hanging out, talking about making music, technology, inspiration, whatever. It's a really nice place to be if you're interested in this kind of stuff. And the other thing I want to make people aware of is our Patreon page, where you can just drop in to support us, or if you want to get some goodies out of it, we have some sound packs and masterclasses and stuff like that. So yeah, I encourage people to have a look there. I think the links should be in the comments by now. Yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks again. Really great
Cheers.
to have you. Yeah, and Richard just has to wait for his Strega, I guess.
I feel
Well, at
bad
this
about
point,
that.
we're not going to send one. I mean, at this
I feel
point,
bad about
He
that.
blew it. He blew it.
no. Now it's enjoyable. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I don't have anything to do. Hey, that's the company. I'm in Portugal.
That's
I'm in
all on
Portugal.
Tony.
Hey,
All right.
Okay, guys. Thanks a
bye,
lot.
guys.
Ciao, ciao.